Hey friends, welcome back. I have mentioned in a couple of videos how decluttering in itself was not enough to forever solve my clutter problem. I had to change my habits and I had to stop looking to stuff to solve my problems. That was what allowed me to stop my house from filling up with clutter again. In today's world, it has never been easier to buy things. You can order a package and have it there in less than 24 hours. Have you noticed how easy it is to first get the idea that you need something, and then within a day or sometimes even less, you're holding that item in your hand without ever having to leave your house? While I love convenience just as much as the next person, I think that this accessibility to goods is one of the main causes of clutter in our homes. Once we decluttered over 80% of the items in our home, I realized I could not keep buying things on Amazon the way that I once had. So today I want to share what exactly I did to stop looking to stuff to solve my problems. Number one, and this is the most obvious one, I decluttered my home thoroughly. It didn't happen all at once, and I took my time. It was over the span of probably a year and a half, maybe even closer to 2 years, but I kept at it until I got it to the point of being manageable. And also my husband was a big part of this too. Once I worked so hard to get rid of so many items, I was especially aware of how much work that was and how something had to change, or else my home was just going to fill right back up again and I would be right back to where I started. And having gotten rid of so many items that I spent good money on, it made me think about how all that stuff got there in the first place. And I do give myself a lot of grace for what I didn't know before I decluttered. So I don't let myself get hung up on what I decluttered that I had spent money on, but going forward, I have held myself more accountable. Know better, do better. So with that, number two, when a problem comes up and I'm tempted to buy some gadget or item for, I begin looking first to my habits. Instead of looking on Amazon to see what would solve this problem, I begin first by asking myself instead, is there a habit change that could solve this problem? For example, when my husband first began working from home 4 years ago, he began working in our home office at what had been my desk. Now, I was thrilled to have him working from home, so it really didn't feel like a sacrifice, but I no longer had a place to go to get things done. I didn't need a desk very often, so it really wasn't a problem. But then once I began taking on some projects that required me to be at my computer more often, I didn't have a place to go. We began strategizing about possible solutions. We talked about buying me a new desk and putting it either in the corner of my bedroom or a corner of our playroom. But the more I thought about it, the more I decided that having a new desk in one of those locations would only create problems. It would add clutter. So I decided on a solution that would not require me to buy anything or take up any space. I would set up in our closet instead. We had decluttered so many of our clothes that we no longer needed this section for clothes. So if we moved the clothes over onto one wall, which was no problem at all, then this area would be free. We got into the habit of putting our clothes in a different spot. The end result was the same, but without acquiring more stuff. And as a side note, it's pretty crazy to think about how we used to fill up this area with clothes, and this area with clothes, and this area with clothes. Number three, I've learned that a lot of times where there is a problem that you think you need to buy some solution for, realizing that a lot of times, excess stuff is creating the problem in the first place. And so sometimes, a lot of times, the habit change that is needed is to have less stuff. A few years ago, my husband and I were talking about how small our mudroom is. It's really a 3-person mudroom, and there are 5 of us. So we were talking about buying some shelving units and like a bench or something to make a second mudroom in the garage. There were many ideas about how to do this all over the internet. So we spent a lot of time poring over different ideas and trying to figure out what things we would need to buy to make a successful garage mudroom. This was around the time that we first began decluttering, and so as we decluttered more and subsequently bought less, we gradually noticed we didn't really need that second mudroom. As we realized our kids didn't need or even want such a wide variety of shoes, we were able to better allocate the space in our tiny mudroom. And with that, we've also gotten into the habit of walking all the extra coats, the extra 10 feet to the closet and hanging them up. None of us is ever going to need 2 coats at the same time, and so we've given up all plans to put in a second mudroom. Number 4, I began being more thoughtful about what I buy and avoiding instant gratification when it comes to purchasing. Now, I realize that there are times when a habit change just isn't sufficient to solve a problem. So when that's the case, I spend plenty of time thinking it over, and I only purchase something after doing a thorough assessment of my habits. And I always ask myself, is this truly going to solve a problem, or is this just going to add clutter? Number 5, I began looking for contentment. We are constantly told by marketing that we lack. We need this gadget or this thing to make us more efficient or organized or trendy, productive. The list goes on. But once I began looking for contentment, I found it. I have shared how decluttering made me feel content with my house again. And once I felt that, I craved it. I wanted to be fine with what I had. I was sick of feeling like I wasn't enough, because I was. And I hated feeling like I wasn't enough if I didn't have the latest gadget, because I was enough the way that I was. Because what was always on the other side of getting that new thing that was supposedly going to make me enough? A new trend that would leave me lacking yet again. I recognize that people in this world truly do lack, so I'm not referring to that. But I am a firm believer that no problem is made better by focusing on what you don't have. I once heard Joshua Becker talk about how a man had come up to him at a conference he was speaking at and told him how he believed that the message of owning less was just as important in impoverished countries as it was in a first world country. This particular man did a lot of nonprofit work in third world countries and said that there were a lot of people who believed that all of their problems would be solved if they could have the kind of excess that those of us who live in first world countries have. I realized that a bigger house or more possessions were not going to make me happier. I was going to make myself happier, and a place to start with that was looking for contentment and being grateful for what I had. Number 6, I stopped looking for magic bullets. There are very few things in life that are magic bullets. That dream car still has to be maintained and washed and kept in the garage. And that dream house still has to be furnished, cleaned, dusted, and maintained. Somewhere along the way, decluttering helped me realize that looking for the magic bullet, gadget, or possession was just filling up my home with clutter. And it was giving me more to do. That magic bullet rarely is a magic bullet. Realize that you and I are competent people who most of the time can solve a problem without buying something new. Let's be honest, when you get a new gadget, often you have to make a habit change anyway. You have to remember to use the new gadget once the newness has worn off, or you have to remind members of your household to use the gadget. But now there is one more thing to be maintained and taken care of. I was recently listening to a woman speak about how someone gave her mother a piano. Her mom didn't play the piano, so while it was a thoughtful and expensive gift, her mother still had to learn to play the piano. It immediately made me think of how habit changes very often still need to take place when we acquire new items. Maybe they're not as dramatic as learning to play the piano, but so often we think of acquiring new items as a cure for any problem that we're having. Number 7, I started recognizing marketing for what it really is. That company or person selling something doesn't care about you. They're just trying to sell a product for commission. Being able to see that more clearly has helped me realize that people aren't always just sharing things out of the goodness of their hearts. If I am looking for a specific item, I do my own research. I don't just take someone on the internet at their word. I talk to people that I know in real life. I try to read honest reviews, and then I honestly assess my own life to see if this gadget really is in my best interest. I would be curious, what changes have you had to make because of decluttering? Or what changes do you anticipate having to make once you have done more decluttering? If you haven't already heard about my Less is More in 24 decluttering challenge, we are decluttering one item every single day. That seems like not very much, but over the course of the year, that will add up to being 366 items. If this is the first that you're hearing about it and you still want to jump on board, you can either make up for lost time and declutter as many items as days that you've missed, or you can start now and still declutter almost 300 items this year. I would love to hear in the comments what changes you have had to make because of decluttering. Thanks for watching, friends. Have a great day.